So, back in early December, I started to feel sick. Not sick, but I have not been able to eat a lot and lost around 8 kg of weight in 10 days. I will admit I am fat and was kinda happy that I just magically dropped weight. I was blaming it on too little rest. I just didn't get used to the food here in the US. I came here from another country for college, or I might have digestive problems, might need to check them out. It was on the 13th that everything just suddenly went downhills. I woke up exhausted, sweating, and not being able to eat anything other than drinking bottles and bottles of water. It lasted for the entire day until 10 p.m. ish. I started to feel like I'm about to pass out. So I went to an ER nearby with my roommate. Well, in short, I had COVID, as well as a certain life threatening thing going on. I'm not going to name it, but some of you might be able to tell from above. I had immediately a bunch of IVs put in and was moved to one of the ICUs. I lost consciousness as soon as I arrived in the ICU and didn't wake up until the next morning, and for the next 48 hours or so, I have been slipping in and out of consciousness. My doctor wanted me to sit in a chair instead of laying down all day, so pretty much all day I was just passed out in a chair. I can vaguely remember dropping my phone on the floor, and I didn't even have the energy to pick it up. Now, all that was the build up. On the third day, when I finally felt better, I went on my school portal and saw a new message from one of my professors telling me that I'm late for turning in my essay for the final project because it was finals week, duh. I know I had the essay 80% completed and it was in my laptop, which was packed and sent to a friend's place by my roommate because we were moving out of our dorm room at the time. And that friend happened to be out of town in New York celebrating the New Year's. And even if my roommate got the laptop somehow from the friend's place, they wouldn't have been able to hand it to me because I had COVID and they didn't allow me to visit. So yeah, everything was messed up. I explained the entire situation to the professor in a long, fully written out message, and they never responded. Fast forward a few days, the professor contacted me again, this time via email to ask about my assignment. Their entire message was like, "My name, where is your project?" I was triggered. I was mad. Well, to be honest, I wasn't in my best mental state because of what happened in the past few days, so I pasted my entire message that I sent to her in my email responding to that, just in case she hadn't read it in the school portal website. She went something like, "Well, too bad, I'm gonna have to fail you on this project because it has been assigned 2 weeks ago and you should have done it then." When you write the same piece of text the second time, trust me, it becomes way easier than the first time. I made sure to write as neatly as I can, trying my best to guilt them in every way possible. Then, as I promised in my response, I took a picture of it, making sure that I'd accidentally included my hand that is swollen with the IV plugged in and a bit of my hospital robe. They call it a Johnny, and sent it away. I sent the assignment to them on December the 17th, not until yesterday, way after the semester had ended, that they called and kinda sorta apologized. I was too busy to check my messages because finals are coming up, so I barely looked at your explanation, blah blah blah. I have no idea where they got my number, but fine, I'll take it. As of now, I've decided to take a gap in the spring semester and go back to my home country for a bit. My health has been greatly affected by what happened, and going back home to take some rest might be good for me. I also get to spend some time with my mom, who has been very anxious since the first day I had the medical incident. Are you going to report them to the head of department for this? Threatening to fail you because they couldn't be bothered reading their student communications to learn you were comatose is a big fail on their part. Their department heads needs to know because you're likely not the first student whose medical situation was ignored like this. Just the first student to make it impossible to ignore. I would still send a letter to the dean explaining the situation and how you were treated by the professor. I had a situation like that happen to me when I was in college, and the dean was not happy with the professor responded the way they did. You are an investment in their school, whether you are paying tuition or on scholarship. The way you are treated will reflect on their actions when you speak of your schooling in the future. The professor may hand out the grades, but they represent the institution that you choose to learn at. Your time is still money well spent on their integrity. That is important to higher education. They do want to know and will handle it accordingly. Next story. Back at one of my old part-time jobs, I was working at an up-and-coming ice cream shop. It was typically pretty busy and fast-paced until after 7 p.m. We were open till 10 p.m. At 9:45 p.m., a man very blatantly intoxicated comes by and mumbles he wanted one of everything, all waffle cones. Very loudly, I specified, "Sir, we've got 15 flavors at the moment. Are you sure you want one of everything?" "Yes, yes, everything. Are you ordering for others?" "Nah, I want it all," he shouted. Typically, we charge the customers after they receive and are satisfied with their ice cream, but this drunkard insisted he pay beforehand because he didn't feel like waiting. I advised against this, but he insisted. After the transaction, I began handing him ice cream cone after ice cream cone. By the third cone, he began to look extremely confused. After the fifth cone, at this point, he had already had ice cream all over his jacket sleeves. He mumbled something incoherent, gobbledygook, and I handed him the sixth cone. Suddenly, he spilled all of them all over himself and the floor. He seemed more confused at how he got to that point than anything. I offered to call my manager to help with a refund, but the drunkard yelled back, "I don't need you," and left for a neighboring bar. He never came back for a refund. About a decade ago, I was working at a higher end deli type restaurant. We were near a very wealthy area and got a lot of late night drunks. One night, a guy pulls up in a town car and his driver lets him out. After stumbling through for her proceeds to order over $100 of food, he pays them and leaves another $100 tip. We kept asking if he was sure, even asked the driver if he was sure. The driver just said to take it. So we make the food, he waits in the car. The driver came back in and said he's taking him home because he finally passed out. Asked if we wanted the money back for the food. Driver said nope, he does this all the time. So we split the tip and the food. Dude never did come back. I did pretty much the same thing as a drunk college kid. Walked into a sandwich shop and chose like 4 meats and 3 cheeses for one sandwich, as I didn't realize they charged per meat and cheese. Cashier looks at me and says, "Dude, you realize this is gonna be like a $20 sandwich, right?" Apparently, drunken Terp 9 did not care. Ugh, I used to work in an ice cream shop that was literally surrounded by bars. I spent way too much time trying to explain to a visibly drunk guy how bad an idea it is to order a hot fudge sundae to go since it'll be totally melted by the time he got home. His response was, "No, it'll be fine, I just drive home really, really fast." Next story. This happened several years ago, but I was thinking about it today because we're putting all the Christmas stuff away in the office where I work. Our Christmas decorations used to include a goofy wooden reindeer that annoyed one of my coworkers. It was sort of a minimalist, abstract thing, maybe about 8 feet tall. I'm not sure what it was about this decoration that bothered her so much. She thought it was hideously ugly and wanted it out of her sight. She had a great sense of humor, and we joked around together all the time. At some point, it became a routine for me to place the reindeer on the middle of her desk when I showed up in the morning. She'd gasp when she arrived and saw it and threw it in the trash. This happened all holiday season until we put the decorations away at the end of the year. In fact, it continued for several years in a row. One year, I didn't pack the reindeer away at Christmas. I held on to it until summer, and my coworker found it on her desk in the middle of July. She appreciated my persistence but decided it was time for her to get the last laugh by taking the reindeer outside and driving over it with her car. After driving over it, she even backed up and gave it another go. I couldn't let it end like that. I took the splintered bits of wood, glued them back together. She found a now slightly misshapen reindeer on her desk again the next day. She took it away with her at lunch and disposed of it somewhere off property, never to be seen again. For good measure, in the months of what followed, she'd occasionally pretend to forget about the episode and ask me, "Hey, what happened to that ugly wooden reindeer?" The next Christmas, I was on eBay looking for Christmas presents, and by chance, I found a nearly identical reindeer. A light bulb went off, and I knew it was time for my revenge. I ordered that reindeer, I shipped it to the office, taking care of my coworker, and it showed up just in time for the holidays. She was rather surprised to get a package and initially thought it was probably a gift from one of her kids. I'll never forget the look on her face when she opened it. After laughing for a solid 2 minutes, she admitted defeat and displayed the reindeer on her bookshelf permanently after that. I misread it and thought it was 8 feet tall. I was impressed that it was constantly on her desk, that she ran over it twice with her car, that she thought a package that was at least 8 feet tall came from her kids, and that she permanently keeps it on her bookshelf. That's my kind of humor. A friend's mom worked at an office where they had a box full of completely dead, shriveled up, and dried out long stem roses. It would appear now and then for whatever and wherever someone thought would get a laugh. One of the women had to go to the hospital, and her pal sent her the dead roses. The nurse was excited for her when the box arrived, but then quickly shut the box again after looking inside. She said, they didn't keep any too good. The patient knew exactly what had happened and was greatly cheered that her friends thought of this for her. Laughter really is the best medicine, no matter what the ailment. That reminds me of a prank I played on a friend of mine, Peter, that worked in another office in a different building. I had another friend, Ron, that worked in Peter's building that Peter didn't know. I gave Ron 12 ugly and or creepy Christmas decorations that I'd left over from a tacky party. For the 12 days of Christmas, Ron left a different tacky gift on Peter's desk each morning. Ron always came into work much earlier than Peter, so Ron never got caught. Peter did complain to me once that some a-hole kept leaving crap on his desk each night. He never assumed someone was staying late, not that anyone was coming in so early, but he never clued in who it was. I eventually told him and we had a good laugh. Next story. I, 24F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment with my roommate 26F in a large city. We just moved in with each other 3 weeks ago and it's been a disaster. We share a bathroom, she refuses to clean, and she's just generally gross. Every morning she eats breakfast in the bathroom while she's on the toilet. Her breakfast is usually toast, so the crumbs get everywhere. On the floor, on the sink, and even on the toilet. This has attracted roaches, and we even found a dead mouse in the toilet last weekend. I found that she also has a hard time remembering to flush the toilet when she's done, so I'm often greeted with a toilet full of pee, poop, and even period blood one time. She also leaves a lot of different makeup and skincare products on the small sink, so the only thing I can leave on there is my toothbrush. Every time she leaves the bathroom, my toothbrush somehow ends up on the dirty floor. I've had pieces of her hair stuck to it, crumbs from the breakfast, etc. After approximately 10 times my toothbrush was pushed to the floor, I decided to just keep it in my room. I lived with a pair of brothers, 40s to 50s, who shared a room. The younger brother constantly made a huge mess and would refuse to clean. He'd always say the same shit. Cleaning is women's work, I'm a man, men don't clean. It was 3 guys living together, he damn well should have cleaned after himself. His brother would end up cleaning after I got pissed and told them to. One day I got home after working a double, apparently the toilet clogged and they just kept using it as it overflowed. Then they put all my towels on the mess and kept using it. They were absolutely horrible and it took me a while to get rid of them. I was the only one on the lease and my apartment allows pets and most others around me don't, so I wanted to stay. They were the second worst roommates I've ever had. I feel for you. In the meantime, between hopefully finding a new place, can you wall mount your toothbrush? There are plenty of command strip type wall cups. That way she would physically have to go out of her way to drop your toothbrush on the ground. I honestly kind of feel like this is intentional based on it happening literally 10 times already, but she'd have to have a damn good reason to touch it in the first place if it's wall mounted at least. Good luck, LMAO. Next story. This happened a few years ago, but now that I'm no longer with the company, I don't give a crap about sharing. I was working retail and was the most senior sales associate and had been working at the store for over 8 years at that point. It was the holidays and obviously the store was insane. I had put in to not work Christmas Eve as I'd closed 2 years in a row and had bent over backwards that season for them, not to mention the whole seniority subject. I get my schedule and I'm working until 9 p.m. on the 24th. They did it because I could count the tills, thereby making their night easier. Normally, I would have just bitten the bullet and worked because confrontation makes me anxious, but this year was different. My aunt had terminal cancer and wouldn't live to see next Christmas. My managers were well aware of this and scheduled me anyway. This is where revenge comes in. Now, I knew I couldn't call in sick without repercussions, so I planned this out way in advance. I have messed up joints that dislocate very easily. My ankle is the worst due to past injuries, so a few days before Christmas, I popped my ankle in and out a few times. Do not recommend. My ankle is already really messed up, so no harm, no foul, and I was in no physical pain, and I knew it wouldn't cause any real damage. This obviously makes it really swollen. That afternoon, I went to a walk-in ortho clinic, and they said I couldn't work the next 2 weeks at least. I hobbled my way to work with my boot on and a doctor's note in hand. Told my manager I tripped down the stairs and wouldn't let her know when I would be back to work. Collected all my sick time, and they were down their most senior associate, who they relied on for basically everything for 2 weeks during Christmas. This sounds a little extreme, but it was the best decision I've ever made. It was one of my favorite Christmases. I lost my grandma that April and my aunt the following June. The regret I would have had is if I missed the last Christmas with two of the best people in my life for a store who didn't give a shit about me would have been unbearable. Honestly, screw places like that. My guys have pot and sick time. They tell me why that they are going to use time, and I approve that stuff. No, they don't need excuses or lies, just tell me. One had his sister die this week and could tell he's used to having spin things to get time off. Funeral is on Christmas Eve, also had an aunt pass earlier this year. I told him not to come in next week and I would make sure he gets paid. Too many places try to work people to death and then wonder why they have such high turnover. Holy crap, I thought I was the only one that could dislocate and relocate without any pain. I'm a little different though. I don't have past injuries, not even a broken bone. Mine doesn't swell, it just bruises, and if I do it too much, it's a black bruise. It's been my get out of work card too.